Welcome to the Uncommon City podcast. This podcast is from the new faith community that's being birthed in St. Petersburg, Florida, called Uncommon City. We are pursuers of the good, beautiful, and true way of Jesus.
These last couple of weeks, we have been weaving in between Tyler Staton, that is, his book, Living Like Monks and Praying Like Fools, and these four kind of central practices of prayer. We have covered talking to God, we have covered talking with God and listening to God, and the last stage or element of prayer is being with God. It's important to remember that we do not arrive at an ultimate level of prayer, only we practice more and more, deepening our relationship and growing in each practice. Have you ever noticed when you stop praying as much or stop worshiping as much or stop reading the Bible as much, the more further away that God tends to feel? And the opposite is just as true. The more we talk to God, the more we talk with God and listen to God, the more we just want to be around Him and the more we just want to be in His presence. John Mark Comer compares this to a marriage, and he says that many of us can just be with our spouse or your person and nothing else is needed. You experience a deep satisfaction with their nearness. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to talk about anything in particular. You just enjoy being together. And this is what it's like to be with God. This type of wordless communion has come to be known as contemplation. And there's three basic dimensions of contemplation and contemplative prayer, that is, when we talk about that. And that is one, looking, yielding, and resting. So when we think about contemplative prayer, we think about how to be with God in those three ways: by looking, by yielding, and by resting. And so to be with God is to look in love. 2 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 18, it says, "And we all with unveiled face, beholding the glory of the Lord, are being transferred into the same image from one degree of glory to another. For this comes from the Lord, who is the Spirit." And when the Apostle Paul, who's the author of this particular scripture, when he speaks about glory, he's talking about God's glory. And it simply means God's presence and His beauty. So looking in this way is to contemplate or to behold the goodness of God, the beauty and the goodness and the love of God on us. And when we look at something, we typically give all of our attention, all of our fixed attention to this thing or this person. We fix our eyes on that person. And this is the most basic aspect of contemplative, I can't say it today, contemplation of being with God, is to fix our eyes in love and attention to God. We fix our eyes in love and attention to God and on His love and compassion always on us through Jesus Christ. And I love what John Mark, what he says, more so how he always describes God's love and goodness in this way. And he describes it as His love and goodness and beauty coming towards you. And it's helpful to commit to memory, since it's usually us that moves away from God anytime we're experiencing shame and doubt or unbelief. So rather, to look in love with God is to know that His love is always coming towards you and to put your attention onto that. The second way we can practice contemplative prayer is to be with God, yielding in His love. Now, last week we talked about petitioning in prayer and recognizing that God is the source of our every need, and we should bring all of our prayer requests, all of our asks, both basic and big, to God. And sometimes in that type of prayer, we want to move God's hearts with our bold requests, and we want to change what is. But yielding in prayer is to accept what is. While petitioning is to move God's heart to change what is, yielding in prayer is to accept what is. We let go of what we cannot control and we surrender our will to the will of the Father. This is at the heart of contemplation. To sit and to be still with God is an act of surrendering in love, but not in defeated submission. Now, to be with God is also to rest in God's love. This is the third way. And this is often the most difficult part for us, especially if we already have a hard time with a practice that we know, Sabbath, right? To rest and to not work and to be still and enjoy God's presence. But even in our relationship with God, we don't know how to not work. We don't know how to not do, to not serve. And we are more likely to be overwhelmed and led by our busy schedules and our growing to-do list and our ever-increasing responsibilities. We live in a state of performance-driven culture. So being still actually feels unproductive. The author and Bible teacher, Jackie Hill Perry, she once said that sitting in stillness can feel like a waste of time. Even reading the Bible feels more efficient because we are doing something. We're reading and highlighting and circling. But God calls us to rest, and it's holy to rest, to set down busy work, to empty our busy minds, and to let our busy hearts be filled with God's love and His delight. Resting in God's love is less about what we do, but what He will do in us. Paul prays this prayer in Ephesians in chapter 3, verse 16 through 19. He says, I pray that out of His glorious riches, He may strengthen you with His power through His Spirit in your inner being, so that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith. And I pray that you, being rooted and established in love, may have power, together with all the Lord's holy people, to grasp how wide and long and high and deep is the love of Christ, and to know that this love that surpasses knowledge, and that you may be filled with the measure of all the fullness of God. Practicing being with God, resting in His love is exactly how we are filled with the measure of all the fullness of God. Now, being with God in prayer is a key part of our spiritual formation because we know from research and from experience, the more that we give our attention to and our time to, the more that we give that to things or people, the more like those things or people we become. And you remember the old adages growing up, show me your friends and I will show you your future. Why did our parents say that to us all the time? It's probably because during those adolescent years, our brains are still developing and we are very influenced by other decision making. And so it's most importantly, it's because we mimic what we see, and what fills up our hearts and what fills up our minds tends to flow out of us in every area and every direction at some point. But through prayer, we can experience God's love and become more loving. When we gaze upon the beauty of the Lord and become aware of His gaze on us, we surrender our grip of our own will and become more attuned to His will. And we rest in His love and fully understand that not one thing that we do is going to add to our days, but we gladly sit still knowing that He is with us and focusing on His love coming towards us. But still, there are challenges that we will likely face in our attempt towards practicing contemplative prayer. And so those three things, there's three challenges that we're likely to face. And those three things are 1, distraction, 2, hurry, and 3, fear. At any given moment, we have access to the outside world and every desire that we have with the tiny little sidekicks that rule our days, that live in our pockets and our purses, our phones. We can do all the things. And we know that outside isn't quiet and neither is the inside. Our inner world is alive and it's always on and it's active, buzzing with all the other things that we are contemplating, that we're working through, that we're planning, that we're organizing, that we're trying to remember, that we're trying not to remember. And the science of the brain is wild. The moment that we set our minds on prayer, or the moment that we set our minds to pray, just as fast, our minds are jumping and moving on to the next thing. And what usually happens when we do that, when we commit to spending time in prayer, we commit to getting alone with God, and we start praying, and we start thinking of all the other things, we get down on ourselves. And then the less we pray, we just can't do the habit. We can't practice, so we shouldn't pray at all. And we stop doing that. But the thing is that distraction is inevitable. And when it does happen in prayer, we can simply bring our minds back to God. No matter how many times we get distracted, bring our minds back to God. Distraction is only at its best when we allow ourselves to be carried away by that thought that enters our mind. So instead, we must turn our minds again to God. Turn it again back to God. And not only is it not quiet outside, it's also fast paced. Life moves at a lightning speed, and it's pretty convenient until we're swept up in the current of our culture of the world. Now, we've heard it said that Jesus was, but to live at a slower pace, we have got to, as Dallas Willard puts it, ruthlessly eliminate hurry from our lives. John Mark says that to do so, we must confront our impatience and just how quickly we get bored. Every day, we are overstimulated, we're oversaturated, we are overworked, we are anxious, we are fidgety. And when we've been conditioned to believe that productivity is the main thing, then we fail to see that prayer is not always about the life outcomes that we can get from God. Prayer is about God Himself. So we have to confront that impatience that lives within us, because we move fast sometimes. And when we move fast, we miss Him. Finally, fear is the last hurdle in learning to be with God. When distraction and hurry have been stripped away in the quiet, we are left with what's really sitting at the bottom of the well of our hearts. Whatever is deep down within us will come up to the surface in prayer. And this is terrifying because pain does exist. We know it. We all have it, and we have likely learned how to cope with it, or to numb it, or to run from it. Or to pretend that it doesn't even exist to begin with. So it's scary to be quiet and these things now bubble up. But everything is known to the Father. Nothing is hidden. However, it's through quiet prayer that we can create a healthy outlet and space to offer up the bruised and brokenness that we carry to God. So, breathe. And let's take a deep breath together. Being with God is the hardest practice, but it is attainable. And so we start where we are. We must take steps to slow our lives down and learn how to rearrange our lives around God rather than trying to fit Him into our own chaos. One practice at a time, we can start where we are. We can create margin wherever in our day, whether it's 5 minutes outside, 5 minutes in the beginning, at the end of your day. Practice contemplating the goodness of God, not so much in deep theological thought, although you can do that, but by looking at God, looking at you in love, yielding to His love, and resting